Hello, welcome transfer students to Carolina. My name is Gidi Shemer, Dr. Gidi Shemer from the biology department, and we are about to start. I'm just going to share my screen right now. What we're going to do today in this short summer orientation of 2020 is first to try to give you a big picture of the bio major, to talk a bit about the difference between the BA and the BS. But I also want to be very practical and talk about some very specific tips for the coming semester as part of the idea, as part of the big picture. This is just the beginning of our discussions. Many of you already contacted me, and I strongly encourage all of you to contact me. You'll see my email address shortly in the next slide with any questions, concerns, or what have you about the transfer process, about the fall 2020. So let's go ahead and start. Again, I'm Gidi Shemer. I'm at Coker Hall 213A. I'm not there right now, as you can imagine, because of COVID-19, but that's where I typically am. I'm the faculty advisor, I also teach. I'm a teaching faculty, and many of you will probably take my classes. I teach human anatomy and physiology, molecular biology and genetics, so 202, and an upper level class, cancer biology. Another hat that I'm wearing is I'm the director of undergraduate research in biology. So you can see that in many ways and aspects, we will be interacting together. But for today's presentation, the main thing you need to remember is I'm the faculty advisor. It's not instead of, it's complementing the job of the Gen Ed, the General Education Advisor, to do an awesome job. And whatever is related to research, course planning in biology, sciences as a whole, paths, and so on and so forth, just let me know. You can always contact me. I want to mention a few people to know. This is just three of many, but the three I want you to know right now. Ms. Summer Montgomery is our amazing student service manager, the one working behind the scenes with all 2,500 majors or so. Involved in registration, course assignment, and so on. She's not the person to approve your enrollment into a class. For that, you have to interact with an instructor, but she's the one that can deal with administrative issues that you might have. If you have questions to her, you can email her, but also write your PID number. And this is true not just for summer, but for any email that has something to do with either registration or advising. So this is true for emails to Gen Ed advisors. To me, this is really helpful. I want to also mention one of the Gen Ed advisors, Ms. Marie-Charles Horn, who has a very specific role or position of the pre-health professions advisor. I can only guess from previous experience, from past experience, that many of you are pre-meds or pre-PA or pre-dentistry or pre-whatever you can think of in the health professions. You want to contact her with questions about anything to do with those health professions, including, for example, extracurricular activities and opportunities. You can also see a website link here. Join that. You can join a listserv when you get in and get all the information about anything that has to do with professional schools. And the last person I will mention today is Dr. Gustavo Maroni. He's a retired biology professor, but he's still working with undergrads on transfer credits. So he's the one to approve or not to approve, to evaluate at least transfer credits. And if you have any issues and you're not really sure, you can contact him at this email address and he'll be happy to help you. Again, there are other people, like people responsible for career advising in biology or study abroad in biology, but we'll talk more about them in the orientation we'll have just a day before classes start. Okay, before we start with introducing the major, I want to address a couple of things that are really important and probably important right now for this coming semester. First of all is to address this question. What do you do when you cannot find a seat in the class? And some of you probably have tried to get into a class, say anatomy and physiology, biology 252, and see that the class is closed. So don't give up. This is especially true for you transfer students that are junior transfer students. We actually save some seats for you. We cannot guarantee the seat for each and every one of you, but in almost all of our classes, definitely in the large classes, we have about 10% of the seats that are saved for junior transfer students. So what do you do if you try to and you couldn't get in? Email, contact the instructor. Again, remember to add your PID number, introduce yourself, explain and mention that you are a transfer student and that you are a junior transfer student. And that instructor or instructors, if they can, they will be happy to accommodate you with the assistance of Summer Montgomery, a student service manager. If they cannot, they will still invite you to attend the first day of classes. So you can sit in, there will be a sign-up sheet. Fingers crossed that we'll be back in classes and we'll have actual physical seats, but if not, it's going to happen online anyhow. And then based on seats availability, we'll try our best to put you in the class. Which classes to take? We'll talk more in details, definitely talk more in details a day before classes start, but right now, as you register to classes, I do want to highlight two important notes. The first one is don't take more than 2 sciences or analytical classes, including math, in your first semester. Now, this doesn't seem that it makes sense, especially if you're junior transfer students, right? Because you have so much to take in so little time. So of course, it seems that you need a 3rd or 4th, but don't. I cannot overemphasize how big of a mistake that can be to take in your first semester more than 2 sciences class. I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying when I'm saying a science class. I'm putting a lecture and a lab as one course. So for example, to take a class like Biology 252, Anatomy and Physiology, together with the lab, I will just call it one class, although administratively they are separate classes. And you can add to that, let's say, Organic Chemistry 1. So here we got Organic Chemistry 1 and Anatomy and Physiology with the lab. Beyond that, there are some specific courses that you can take. Psychology is fine, maybe statistics is okay, but definitely not more than 2 biology and chemistries or physics classes in your first semester here. Wherever you come from, there's going to be a gap and there's going to be an adjustment. You're going to hear a lot the term adjustment semester. Adjustment will take place. And we're trying to make this adjustment as smooth as possible. So don't take more than 2. The second no-no is not to take 2 core classes. We have 3 core classes. We'll talk about the classes shortly, but right now we'll introduce 201 and 202 and 205. And even if you want to take only 2 of these, so it makes sense, right? 2 sciences, it follows that rule. Still, don't take these 2. I'll address this later on, but these are considered by students to be typically the hardest classes to engage in biology. Take one. You probably want to take 202, molecular biology and genetics, if you're interested in this field, or if you are a pre-med, or if you're interested in ecology and evolution or organismal biology, you probably want to start with biology 201. Either one, 201 is not a prerequisite to 202. Either one is fine, but just take one. Okay, with these tips, let's move and introduce the biology as a whole. So biology has 2 main degrees and 1 sub-plan. So let's start with the BA, the Bachelor of Arts, which is designed to provide greater flexibility in meeting broad student interests. Many students will double major or add some more minors, but some will just have a BA, which is totally fine. I am, by the way, a BA in biology. I don't have a biology BS. We didn't have biology BS in my university, actually. The biology BS is our second and most popular track or major. It's very rigorous, just like the BA is rigorous, but it's more rigorous when it comes to the non-biology classes or non-biology STEM classes, as we will see. If you complete all the requirements, the chemistry part of the Bachelor of Science in Biology is basically comprising a minor in chemistry. You still need to declare that minor in chemistry, but it's a given if you take all the classes. As sub-plan under the Bachelor of Science, and when you declare a major, you need to declare a sub-plan. It can be a regular BS or a specific sub-plan that is called QBio, quantitative biology. We just call it QBio, which is for those who really like math, computer science, or statistics, working alongside with biology. I will not talk about the details of the requirements for this major. I will do that during the semester when we'll have info sessions. That's a wonderful opportunity for those who like all these fields together. Last, the final, but not specific track, but a program that I would like to mention is a program called UNC BEST. This is for anyone who takes bio, but not just bio, it's also true for chemistry. You can do bio BA or bio BS or quantitative bio BS. The UNC BEST program is a program that is a collaboration between us, science departments, and the School of Education. You are taking some classes in high school education, and you actually do a one semester as a student teacher, and eventually you graduate from Carolina with a teaching license. And you'll find a job 5 minutes after you graduate from Carolina. There are many schools who look for UNC BEST graduates. Let's talk a bit about the biology BS or BA. To put things in context, I will say this. Among the incoming students or first years and transfer students, we have about 94 to 95% of our bio majors are bio BS. So almost all of them. On the other hand, if you look at our graduating seniors year, then you ask how many of you are doing BS or BA, it's only about 75, 74%, 73% sometimes of our biology majors. So we're talking about 20% basically that shifted from a BS to a BA. There can be many reasons for that. Sometimes you just want to add other experiences. It can be different majors, or it can be more research or doing something else that you like at the university. But together with the BS is just too much, so you shift to the BA. Others will start with the BS and realize that it's a bit overwhelming and it's just too much, taking so little time. This is extremely common among the transfer junior students, especially, also sophomore, but not just with transfer student. The important thing to remember is that the title of your degree means almost nothing to future professional schools and employers. Nobody is going to reject you from getting into medical school or even graduate school in biology if you have a BA, not a BS. It's more about what these entail. The more sciences you have, the better, that's for sure. So in that sense, the biology BS might be a better deal, but this is true only as long as you're doing well. So if at some point you realize that the BS is hurting your performance, this is a good time to move to a BA. And again, you can be extremely successful with the BS and still want to move to a BA because you just want to have more time to do other things. That's totally fine. The BS is also a good degree towards med school and dental school because the requirements for the biology BS are also the requirements for the med school. So for many, it would be a good idea to start as a BS after you transferred in, but then check your pulse each and every semester, again, to make sure that it's not overwhelming and that you're doing well. So what are the differences? We'll start with the biology part, and then we'll talk about the non-biology STEM classes. In the biology BA, I'm talking only about biology, not about gen ed stuff. You have one quantitative reasoning, which can be either math or statistics or computer science. It doesn't even have to be calculus 1. So you have one course. You take the 3 core classes, I briefly mentioned them. 201 is ecology and evolution. 202 is molecular biology and genetics. I'm one of the instructors in that course, but not in this semester. 205 is cell and developmental biology. You need to complete 202 before you take 205. But you don't have to start with 201. 202 or 201, either of these, depending on your interest. These are all the 3 core classes. They don't need to come before any other class. The only class you need to have before any other class is Biology 101 in the lab that I hope most of you already had completed. But you'll need to take all of these at some point during your years here. Then we have one course, one requirement that we call organismal biology. Typically, these are classes that are numbered that have the 7 digits in the middle of the number, like biology 272 in lab, biology 278 in lab, biology 474, classes that typically address plant-based biology or animal-based biology, but not entirely. There's some exceptions to the numbers, but I don't want to go into those details right now. And in addition to the organismal, and the organismal comes with a lab. In addition to the organismal with a lab, you need to take 3 biology electives. One of them is with a lab. An example, I mentioned anatomy and physiology that I teach, that comes with a lab. One of the 4 classes, the organismal and the 3 electives, has to be an upper level class, which is a 400 or 500 class. And then we have a list of allied sciences from psychology 101 to classes in statistics, geology, and so many. I'll show you the list later on. You need to take 5 of these. Many of you actually transferred at least a few of these. This is the biology BA, a total of 120 hours of biology and general education credits. The BS, as you'll see in this part, is not extremely different. So you need to take not just one quantitative reasoning class, but 2. A Math 231 is Calculus 1 plus one of these options, either Calculus 2 or Statistics, that's STOR 155, or one of these 2 computer science classes. Any will do. I would just say that if you are a pre-med, you probably want to make sure that you're taking statistics. And even if you took AP statistics back in high school and that gave you credit for STOR 155, some medical schools, UNC included, do not accept that. So you'll need to take statistics at the college level. If you took it at a community college or any other university, you're totally fine. So Calculus 1 plus Statistics 155, but if you prefer, you can take Calculus 2 or any of these other options. Core classes, the BS is just like the BA. Organismal with a lab, the BS is just like the BA. Electives, instead of 3, you need to take 4 electives, 2 with labs. And please note that 2 out of the 5 being the 4 biology electives, and the organismal with a lab have to be above 400. And 8 allied sciences, so more allied sciences, and 123 hours. If we look at just at the biology, the BS seems pretty similar to the biology BA. It's 1 extra biology elective and basically 1 other quantitative reasoning class. The major difference is with regards to the allied sciences. It's not just the number, it's the identity of these classes. In the BA and the BS, you need to take Chemistry 101 in the lab and then Chemistry 102 in the lab. But in the BA, as I mentioned, you just need a total of 5 allied sciences. This is Chemistry 102, plus 4 other classes from that allied science list. In the BS, in addition to Chemistry 102 and lab, you need to have 3 advanced classes in chemistry. Analytical chemistry, which here we call 241/L, Organic 1, 261. We don't have at UNC Organic 1 lab. So the analytical and lab replaces that Organic 2 with lab that we have in other universities. 262 and lab, that's Organic 2 and lab. These are 3 chemistries, advanced chemistries. Then we have 2 physics, Physics 114 and Physics 115, or if you prefer Physics 118 and 119. Both of them are calculus-based. Most biology majors will take 114 and 115. They are geared towards the life sciences. But if you want to take more advanced classes in physics, 118 and 119 will have to be taken. And then 2 other classes from that list, 2 other allied sciences. Now this is a big difference between the BS and the BA. It means that you need to take a lot more chemistries, physics, and a bit of math more than the biology BA. For some, it's wonderful, there's no problem. For others, it's just too much. This is what you need to check each and every semester. Since we're in the chemistry, and since we're talking already about next semester, I also want to talk a bit about the order of classes, because it's not always intuitive and it can be confusing. Okay, so how does it go? Here's the chemistry sequence. 241NL, to remind you, is analytical chemistry. 261 Orgo 1, 262 is Orgo 2. 430 is a class that is not a requirement for the biology major. It's biochem. It's either called Chem 430 or Bio 430. Instead, it's the same class basically. It counts as a biology elective above 400. But the reason I'm mentioning it here is because many students are pre-med. And all pre-med basically need to take this class eventually, biochem, not so much because of a requirement, but because they need the materials for the MCAT. So if you are a pre-med, you need to take all of these classes basically. We'll have an exception for those who transfer the OGO, but we'll talk about it later. What about opposites? The lecture 261 is a prerequisite to the lecture of 262. The lecture of 262 is a prerequisite for 430. So if you need to take 430, you need to take 261 lecture, 262 lecture, and 430. The labs are not a requirement for 430. In order to take 262 lab, though, you need to take 241/L. So after all of these confusing rules, I guess, what you want to think is that if you need to take all of these four, one option is to take 241/L and then 261 and 2/L and then take 430, which makes sense. However, for many students, this is too much to take in too little time. For example, some of you might have not with Chemistry 102, so you need now to take Chemistry, so now it's 5 classes. I mentioned that 430 is a class needed for the MCAT. It depends on the time of the MCAT. You need to design backwards. And if this is too much to take in so little time, another alternative option would be to do this. To start with the 261 lecture, to move to the 262 lecture, and then to take 430. By this time, right here, you are ready for the MCAT. The other two classes, 241L and 262L, just the lab, you can take later on. If it's during your time here, that's great. That will be required for the biology BS. But if not, then you can still graduate with a BA and have all those pre-med or pre-MCAT, I should say, materials being covered earlier on. A word about medical schools and these two, 241/L and 262L. 3-4 years ago, all medical schools required all of these. Now there's a trend. Many schools, including UNC medical schools, do not require these two. UNC, for example, requires you to take 3 chemistries and 2 labs in chemistries at the college level, not including AP. So Chemistry 101 in lab, Chemistry 102 in lab, and 261, and you covered. But some schools still require this, some dentistries require this. So it makes sense to try to take the whole package if you can. And of course, if they're not too much, so they hurt your performance. The most important part is your performance at the end of the day. What about 2 chemistry classes in 1 semester? Definitely not in the first semester. You'll find some that will recommend you to take 241L together with 261. Don't do that. If you're not a chemistry major, wait, at least not in the first semester here. So for the majority of the bio majors, the transfer juniors or sophomores, actually, that's for the same matter, what you probably want to take is biology 202 if you're a pre-med, or 201 if you're interested in ecology and evolution and organism biology. That will be 1 science class. And the second will be either organic 1, if you want to follow this path, or chemistry 241/L, if you want to follow this path. 2 sciences, all the rest gen eds. If you have an associate degree, then you don't need to take specific gen eds, but you can just take electives. Some of you might have completed 8 hours of organic chemistry. They took organic chemistry 1 and organic chemistry with both labs in your college, let's say, for example, a community college. These were not transferred as 261, 262L, and 261 lab, because we don't have a 261 lab. But if you got all 8 hours being transferred, even if one of the labs is transferred simply as a general chemistry, then we have a special treat for you, if you will. In this case, you need to take 241 in the lab. You can take 241 as is, just a lecture, without the lab. Even better, you can replace 241 analytical chemistry with biochemistry 430. So again, if you had transferred 8 hours of chemistry, of organic chemistry, and including the 2 organic chemistry labs, you can take 430, and that will fulfill your chemistry requirements for the biology BS major. This will also suffice for medical school. The only caveat, well, not caveat, but something to remember, is that if you use biochemistry 430 to cover your chemistry requirements for the bio BS, you cannot double dip. You cannot use 430 as a biology elective at the 400 level. You can do either. But for the majority of the students, they would prefer to take 430. It helps them and more relevant to them compared to analytical chemistry. Again, this is a lot of information. Always feel free to contact me. We can also Zoom and meet. So talk about this in more details. This is a list, a partial list of the allied science electives. You can see that in many cases, we're talking about any course above 100. So any course above marine sciences above MASC 100 or geology 100, many options. You can go to the UNC catalog and see the requirements for the Bio BS or BA. And again, you'll see all the courses that are relevant. And I'm pretty sure that many of you have at least 2, if not all the 4 allied sciences that you need in addition to the Chemistry 102. You know about Connect Carolina at this point, and as you probably already know, Connect Carolina is not the most user-friendly algorithm and program to students. What I do every semester, if you go to course offerings, what you need to go is to UNC, biounc.edu, and then to go to undergraduate studies, and then you offerings. When you go to course offerings, you'll find here, this is not an updated screenshot, so you'll also find here a 5-year tentative plan to get an idea of all the biology classes. But specifically, you can see what happens with the fall 2019. Again, this is an old screenshot. Today, you also have fall 2020. And then you'll reach something that looks like this. So this is just one page of this entire document, who is divide the classes to different modules or fields of interest. Here's physiology, immunology and disease, or microbiology and disease. This one is plant biology. And you can see classes here, the number, the course number, who is teaching, the prerequisites, how many credit hours, and what it counts as. So for example, something in organismal biology, or 555L counts as an EE. That's experiential education that many of you will need as part of the Gen Ed requirements. I would also like to highlight this course, Biology 217. It's a course geared specifically for transfer students called the Physician's Garden, very popular, very successful. So check these, check to see what works, what's working for you. You cannot see dates and times here. For that, you need to go into Connect Carolina, but it gives, I think, a bit of a more of a friendly vision of what you'll see in this fall. Okay, this is basically almost it. Before we end, I just want to highlight a couple of things here. I mentioned the core classes, and I'm hoping I did not scare you off. I did not scare you too much about the 201, but I said don't take more than 2 and don't take more than 2 sciences. I mentioned the fact that they are very challenging, wherever you come from. Because for many students, this is the first time they actually take a 200 level class in biology. Some transfer students already took some classes, but you didn't take them at UNC. And why are they considered to be challenging? These are large classrooms. We're talking about 250 to 200, depending on the class itself. In many cases, it depends on which class, but sometimes you will feel like these are 2 classes packed into one, cell and development biology. In many classes, you'll have 2 professors. One will teach about development. This is not easy. We acknowledge that. We are shifting to a more of a 1 professor classes, but teach so many students, we are limited to a point. These classes, this is not a limitation, but I just want to mention, will involve recitations. These are small group activities led by a graduate student. And I mentioned the fact that there are flipped classes. So I want to say a word about the flipped classes, and I want to explain why these classes are difficult. So in general at UNC, and definitely in the biology department, and definitely in these type of classes, our job as instructors, again, in this case, I'm teaching 202, is not to transmit you with content. Our job. Of course, we will talk about content, but our main job is to challenge your brain and to make you better critical thinkers. That's what I'm paid for. And what we're going to do is to work much more about application, high order skills rather than basic skills. And it takes time to adjust to that. I'm not suggesting that you didn't do it at all in your previous university. You probably did, but we see from experience that it takes time. It takes time for the students who started here. It takes time for the students who are coming from other universities. You're one in a class of community college. You felt like you're the best. You're coming into a class of 250 and you feel that you are struggling and you feel this is not the same experience. It happens. This is part of the adjustment. You just need to be mentally prepared for that. The classes are flipped in the sense that the classes themselves will include lectures coming from the instructors like myself, but it's not just going to be old school lecture. So a lot of this will be based on individual and group activities during class time. Before the class, you'll have to read or view a videos or what have you, and to prepare for the class, you'll have quite a bit of pre-class assignment, and you'll be expected to come to class already prepared. After class, in many cases, there will be a lot of homework and assigned readings. So the class itself is much more than a classroom settings, regardless of whether it's going to be Zoom online or it's a real physical setting. In regular semesters, we're talking about a lot of work, and you need to prepare yourself for that. So what do you do to get that A+? We don't really have an A+ at UNC, but let's call it an A. Okay, you use resources, interact with your professors. We are waiting to hear from you. Use, of course, the textbook, record the lecture. One tip, record your lectures. Even if they're physical, if they're not just Zooms. In the case of Zoom, instructors will record them for you. I'll say a word about the mentors and SIs momentarily in the next slide. Prepare for at least 3 hours of work by yourself per 1 hour of lecture, in some cases more. Proactive. Don't wait for them, instructors and mentors, to tell you what to do. You always need to seek to read, to Google or use any other search engine to ask questions by yourself. And have a backup plan. And the backup plan is not about that specific course. It's more about backup plan with regards to advising. I mentioned one example would be the BS and the BA. Sometimes you need to do some small adjustments. Sometimes to change a major. We hope to have you all staying with us, but sometimes for some students it's just too much, and they learn that another major is maybe more interesting to them. Feel free to change. Come, take advice, talk with us advisors, and see what's working for you. Almost before the end now, a very impressive program that I'm very proud of. It's called the Peer Mentors or Peer Instructors. It's Peer Mentors and SI Leaders. SI stands for Supplemental Instruction. In each of the big classes, Bio 101, 201, 202, 205, and 252, when you come to the class, you'll see 250 students and about extra 10 students. These 10 students are undergrads that already took that class and took that class with that specific, in that specific section with that specific instructor. These were some of the top students in the previous semesters, and they're here to help you. What do? All of them are in the classroom, helping with group activities or answering questions. Even if we're going to have online classes, and we're probably going to have at least some classes that are going to be online, they will be there and help and answer in the chat as we are progressing. And then after class, they're going to help by offering either peer mentoring, which is like tutoring, 101 tutoring, or SI, supplemental instruction. 2 or 3 of them are leading reviews every week, recapping material that we covered in the previous week with the instructor, giving more problem sets, etc., helping you. This is all free. This is not something you need to sign up for, join, and it's really, really, really important. How to get involved? We have the TriBeta. TriBeta is the Beta. It's a biology student organization. And you have the Bio Ambassadors, an amazing group of undergrads who are doing different things from outreach to the community, to organize events in the biology department, but also to mentor incoming transfer students and incoming first years. So check about the Bio Ambassador. They have a Facebook page, they have a website. See if you're interested to interact with them. And really almost finally, that's the one before the last slide, research. In the first semester, I recommend maybe to wait with the research until adjustment. Later on, we want you to engage in research. It can be in one of the many, many labs in biology or on campus. And if you prefer not to do individual research mentored by a lab, what you can do is join courses that include a research component. For example, what we call group classes, like seafood forensics and like lab in genetics. So do research. If you're not being a researcher, that will be a great asset and great skills to have. And this is my final slide. Again, to remind you of the bio.unc.edu to get more information. You can join us at Facebook and Twitter. Just look for UNC Biology undergrads, and we will keep you updated and share some exciting information. And again, my email address is bishemer, B-I-S-M-E-R, at email, the word email, .unc.edu. You can always contact me. And we will talk more. We will have another orientation before classes start. And we all hope to see you physically on campus. And even if that doesn't work, we'll see you online. We'll get it through. We did it in the last semester and it went well. We both in Carolina. Go Hills.